Hello beautiful ladies, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be doing a modesty Q&A. So I asked you guys on Instagram to send in your modesty questions, and I have a whole list of them right here printed out, and there are quite a few. So I'm gonna do my best to get to as many of them as I can, but we can always do a part 2 to this video, and this is clearly a topic that a lot of people have questions about. So I'm really excited to start chatting about this today. I'm really excited to just have a space on my channel where we can talk about modesty, because I think that a lot of women feel uncomfortable talking about modesty because it feels like, oh, it's oppressive, when in my opinion, it's not oppressive at all. So I'd really like to talk about all of that, and I want to preface this video with a few things. The first thing I want to do is clarify what I mean when I speak about modesty. So on my channel, I'm kind of talking about the base level of modesty. I'm not talking about certain religious rules when it comes to being modest. I'm just talking about the things that are just kind of like ground rules for modesty. Ways to cover up very obviously sexual parts of the body. That's usually going to mean covering up cleavage. It's going to mean shorts that cover your bottom. I'm not specifically talking about wearing shirts that cover your shoulders or skirts that cover the knee or anything like that. And the reason that I'm being a little bit less strict about modesty on my channel is for two reasons. One is that I don't want to alienate anybody who is doing their best to be modest, but maybe hasn't decided that they want to go all the way to covering up their arms or wearing really long skirts or whatever it is. I want people to feel like you're doing a great job, even if you've just decided that you're not going to wear something that's low cut or wear a really, really short skirt. That for me is a great place to start, and it may be where you end up, and that is totally fine. But just starting there and having some certain ground rules about modesty, to me, is going to start a conversation that is much more useful than just immediately going from, okay, this is what the average woman might wear in 2020 to, okay, cover everything up. It just might be too hard of a transition. So that's number one. And number two is that I want it to be attainable. If you are somebody who isn't used to dressing modestly, there are just a couple of things you can start off by doing that will make your closet and your clothing a little bit more modest, and it doesn't have to be this huge, enormous overhaul to what you're already wearing. Instead, you can take small baby steps to become a little bit more modest, and if you decide you want to become even more modest over time, do it. That's great. I just want to make it a little bit more attainable for those people who are not used to being modest and may want to become more modest over time. The next thing I want to address before we get into the questions is why modesty is important, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. I've done a few videos on it, so I'm not going to get super into it here. We want to be modest for ourselves, and that's for two reasons. One is that you want to treat your body with respect, and you don't want people to constantly be looking at your body before knowing who you are and your personality, because putting your body out first is going to act as a distraction from who you are and from your personality, because your body is the first thing that you're sharing with someone, as opposed to wearing something that's attractive and that accentuates your best features, but isn't putting your whole body out there on display. And then the other part of dressing modestly is that if you want a certain kind of man and you're looking for a long-term relationship, dressing in a certain way may give men the wrong idea for what you're actually wanting to do. And if you are dressed in a way that is showing off a lot of skin, then men may think that you're more interested in a short-term relationship kind of thing than something that's more long-term, because they're going to view you more sexually than they are going to view you as a woman that they would want to date. So that's just a couple of reasons that modesty is important. There are many, many more, but I did just want to touch on that quickly before getting into the rest of this video. So let's get into it. So the first question we've got here is, what are your thoughts on modesty at the beach? And I have gotten so many questions like this because I think that dressing modestly at the beach is really hard. We are living in a time where people are basically wearing underwear to the beach, so it is difficult to kind of understand and figure out what would be modest. So for me, because we are talking kind of basic level of modesty, I would say that there are a few different ways to be modest at the beach, but I would definitely say that wearing a string bikini isn't one of them. Wearing a string bikini or wearing a thong, that kind of stuff to me shows too much skin. Wearing a string bikini may attract attention that you don't want, as well as it's just not really respecting your body in a way that you're kind of putting everything out there. So when I'm talking about modesty at the beach, what I generally recommend is wearing a one piece. I think that one pieces do cover up more of the body than just a two piece. Of course, I'm not talking about a monokini or something that is basically a two piece but has like mesh over it, but I'm talking about like a real one piece. Another good option is wearing a high-waisted bikini with kind of like a sports bra top. That to me is more modest than a string bikini because you are covering more skin. Things are a little bit more tucked away. It's not like you're putting everything out on display. Wearing a more full coverage bottom rather than a thong where you're kind of just putting your entire butt out for everyone to see is something I would consider immodest. So wearing a more full coverage bottom is more modest to me. And wearing rash guards is a really good option, not only because it's more modest, but because it is better for your skin. It protects you from sunburns. Do I always wear a rash guard? No, but I do kind of switch off in between. I have a few bathing suits that are rash guards, and I do like those on days where it's really hot, really sunny, because I don't have to worry about getting that really horrible sunburn on your shoulders. So I like the idea of that too. Now, if you want to be more modest than that, you can wear swim shorts. I think that that's really nice, or a swim skirt, but it's not, to me, necessary. It's more up to you. If you're more comfortable covering up, that makes sense to me. But those are the rules that I follow when it comes to modesty at the beach, because you're not showing off your boobs, you're not showing off too much butt. It's more about wearing something that's comfortable, that you can play at the beach and not worry that things are gonna fall out. And it also just makes you a little bit more covered up when you are wearing a high-waisted bikini or a one piece. Number 2 is how to dress modestly as a teenager. So I totally understand this question, because dressing as a teenager is slightly different than dressing as an adult woman. You are going to be wearing probably more casual clothing, things that just you can hang out in, not so much business wear. It's just more things that you can hang out in and have fun. So I understand why that's difficult, especially now, because I look at teenagers in 2020 and they're wearing less clothing than I think ever before. And it's confusing, and it would be difficult to kind of navigate that as a modest teenager. So what I would recommend is wearing a lot of dresses. I think that'll make things easier. They can be casual, but wearing a t-shirt dress that comes a little bit longer than your fingertips will be easy for you. And it won't draw attention to the fact that you're being modest. It'll just kind of be cute and comfortable, but also is more on the modest side. And then wearing t-shirts is a really easy way to get around the modesty question, because t-shirts are basically modest without trying, and wearing just fun jeans or a little bit of a longer short, maybe some cutoffs, is another way that you can dress a little bit more on the modest side. But you can generally still find things that are still kind of fun and fashionable for your teen years that are modest. I definitely did that. I lived that. So there is a way for you to do it and for you to still feel like you're fashionable and you can still have fun in what you're wearing. Next up, we've got the question, which retailers are the easiest to shop for modest clothes and which ones are the hardest? So I did get a lot of questions similar to this, so maybe this will answer some of them. What I'll say about shopping for clothing is that I don't have specific stores that I shop at because they sell a lot of modest clothing. I just find that a lot of stores have a lot of different options, and they're maybe mostly immodest clothing, but you'll always find those hidden gems at those stores. But an easy one is ModCloth. I always really liked ModCloth because a lot of their clothing is more classic, is more feminine, and does have that modest twist, which makes things easier. Is it a little bit pricey? Yes, so I don't really shop there as much anymore, but they do have a lot of really beautiful dresses, a lot of beautiful skirts that do go with a more modest aesthetic. And then as well, I find that H&M has a lot of really pretty skirts that are a bit longer. So I do appreciate that H&M does that, and they're more on the affordable side. So I do find that they have a lot of nice clothing. I also shop at TJ Maxx. TJ Maxx has a lot of dresses depending on the season, and those dresses can look great and be very modest. And then even Forever 21 sometimes has dresses that are on the longer side. They'll say that they're middies or whatever, but they are actually pretty modest, especially if you wear like a top underneath or you wear a jacket over, something like that. Forever 21 can have some good options. But Forever 21 is also probably one of the more difficult ones because a lot of their clothing is just really far afield, very difficult to find anything that actually looks modest. Target also has some really great options when it comes to longer dresses and some cute pants and tops and things like that. But the thing for me is that I don't really look at any retailers as, oh my gosh, it's impossible to find anything modest there, because if you look through the racks, you'll generally find a skirt or a pair of pants or a top that does fit your modesty standards. So I'm pretty flexible when it comes to shopping. I just like to pop my head into different places and see what they have that might work. But the stores that I mentioned also have a pretty good selection. Number 4 is, what are some ways to practice modesty that don't have to do with clothing? I really like this question because modesty isn't just about clothing. It's about who you are and how you behave. And I like that people are trying to think outside the box of just what clothing you should wear. So that's a really good way to put it. The thing for me with modesty is mostly about not taking for granted the things that you have. I think a lot of being modest comes down to being grateful that you have what you have and being grateful to God for helping you be where you are today. Because we can work hard and we can affect change, but without God, we wouldn't be anywhere. So having that feeling of being grateful and recognizing where everything that you have comes from, I think keeps us modest and keeps us grounded. I also think that modesty comes into play when you're hanging out with people of the opposite gender. If you hang out with a guy in private alone in his room, I think that can very quickly go from what was just a friendly hangout session to something that is more immodest. So being smart about those situations is going to protect you and also keep you being a modest young woman. And then of course, modesty has to do with humility. So being humble about what you've accomplished, not to say that you can't be confident, but also recognizing that you're not better than anybody else, that to me is a good practice of modesty. I'm not a huge proponent of modesty being about not being a loud person. I think that if you're loud and that's in your personality, I have no issue with that. It's more about being a good person and being humble and being grateful. Next up is how do you dress modestly but not look dowdy? So I actually did a whole video on this, basically saying that dressing modestly doesn't have to mean looking frumpy. I am personally not a proponent of that at all. I think you can absolutely dress modestly and look attractive. And I think what it comes down to is wearing things that fit you and balancing volume. If you're wearing too much volume on top and on bottom, you are going to look frumpy, you're going to look dowdy. But if you're wearing a top that's a little bit more fitted and a bottom that is a little bit more flowy, that's going to look so good. It's going to look perfect on you. And if you wear something that's a little bit more blousey on top, but a more fitted pant, that also works really well. So I'll link that video up in the eye because I think it's really important to know that you don't have to look frumpy just because you are dressing more modestly. Dressing modestly doesn't mean dressing unattractively. It just means not showing that much skin and drawing attention to your cleavage, for example, first before you and your smile and your personality. Number 6 is what are your thoughts on hair covering after marriage? So this is a reference to a Jewish law that says that after a woman gets married, she covers her hair because that's a part of her nakedness. It's a part of her that she shares only with her husband and she doesn't share with other people. It's something that's just for him. So I obviously don't cover my hair on a regular basis, but I have a lot of friends and family who do, so I'm not against it at all. For me, I don't know that I'll ever be comfortable with that. My mother never covered her hair, so that's not something I really am used to, and it's not something I think I'll ever do regularly. Whenever I go to synagogue though, or whenever I'm in a religious setting, I do try and cover my hair because I think it's respectful of the people around me who are covering their hair, who are married, and who think that that's an important part of being religious. So I don't see that happening for me in my everyday life, but if I'm ever in a religious Jewish situation, I definitely adhere to those laws. Number 7 is how short is too short when wearing shorts? Short shorts. For me, the thing that makes a short too short is if I can see the under part of your butt cheek. That to me is too short. But if you are wearing shorts that are even a little bit longer than that and are covering more of your bottom, that to me is more on the modest side. Do I try and wear longer shorts? I am currently trying to transition over to that. The majority of my shorts are a little bit shorter than a Bermuda short, but I think I want to start transitioning over to wearing more Bermuda shorts. But I don't think either one is immodest. It really is just your preference as long as your bottom is covered. What are your husband's thoughts on your way of dressing? By the way, love your sense of fashion. Thank you. My husband really likes when I wear modest clothing. It actually means a lot to him when I do. To him, it's a sign of respect that I'm not trying to attract people that aren't him. I like to look nice and I can look pretty, but it's not, oh, I'm putting out a sexual message to men who are not my husband. And he really appreciates that. Does he force it on me? No, this is my decision, but it's something that he loves that I do. The next one is any tips on finding modest fashion that isn't out of date or looks like it comes from 2012? I don't personally find this to be a big issue because I think in 2020, we actually have a lot of different fashion senses and styles that fit into that modest fashion. So there's the boho style, which is a lot of long dresses. And if you're into that, then it's modest and it's a different aesthetic. Or if you want to dress a little bit more 50s, there are a lot of midi skirts that are cut just below the knee that are very, very modest. There are just a lot of ways to embrace modesty without having to go back to looking like you're in 2012 with like a big infinity scarf. Not that I'm opposed to them. But basically, the tips that I would give are figure out what kind of style you like, what kind of era you're inspired by. For me, it's probably the 40s and the 50s. I really like that aesthetic. And then find clothing that's cut similarly, but that still is very modern. So this little jumpsuit that I'm wearing is probably more 50s era, and I really like the way it looks, but the way that it's cut is still very modern and makes me feel very modern. Plus, you can accessorize it in ways that are very modern. And looking up looks online that inspire you, but that may not be totally modest, you can kind of look at it and do a twist on that look to make it more modest. So if somebody's wearing a cute blouse with very short shorts, maybe just getting a longer short with a blousey top might end up working better for you, and you would like that look, or whatever it is that works for you. So finding modern looks and then kind of tweaking them to look a little bit more modest is a good place to start. The next one is, what are your thoughts on off-the-shoulder tops? As I said, I'm really just talking about the basic ground rules of modesty, so I have no issue with off-the-shoulder tops. It's whatever you're comfortable with when it comes to that. The next one is tips for girls who are new to modesty. I am excited about this question because I think there's a lot of really good places to start if you want to become more modest and you want to take it slow, which I think is a smart idea. You don't want to just rush headlong into dressing a different way because you may not end up loving it, and it's best to dip your toe in and then maybe follow it up. But the first thing I would recommend is get a nude cami. So I'm wearing one under my jumpsuit just because this V-neck theoretically could drop a little bit lower than I'm comfortable with, and it's such a good security blanket for me that I'm not gonna be showing off cleavage. It's just an easy way for me to be modest without having to think about it. So if you have a lot of tops that you like that are more of a V-neck, getting a nude cami to wear underneath is something that's going to not draw attention away from your top, but it will prevent you from showing cleavage. So it's kind of like that perfect middle ground where you're not showing off your cleavage, but you're also not distracting from your own fashion. So that's number one. The next thing I would do is get some dresses and skirts that you really love and have them be a little bit longer, at least as long as your fingertips, if not a little bit longer, because wearing a skirt is so pretty and so feminine and takes away that desire to wear really short shorts because they're very breezy, they're not gonna make you overheat. So I think that those two things, starting off by getting some camisoles, nude or other colors, and then also getting some dresses and skirts is a really good place to start. Another thing to do that I recommend is getting some tunics to wear over leggings. If you're a leggings kind of a person and you like to wear them quite a bit, I'm not a fan of wearing leggings outside of the gym without something on to cover your bottom. So wearing a long sweater or a tunic is a really good way to continue to wear leggings, but also be modest. There are so many more questions here that I wish I could get to, but I have been sitting in front of the camera for over an hour. So I'm gonna have to call it quits now, but maybe we'll do a part 2 to this video. Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in. Hey guys, this is Editing Abby here. As I was editing today's video, I realized that I had way too much to say for one video. So I'm actually going to do a part 2 anyways, and I'm hopefully gonna post that this week. So even though I'm asking if you guys want a part 2, you're getting a part 2 anyways. So I guess the question is, do you want a part 3 and a part 4? Also, let me know in the comments if you have any other questions that I didn't get to in this video, or if you agree or disagree with my answers. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please subscribe to my channel and blog if you haven't already. Head over to my Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook and follow me there. Hit that notification bell to get notified of all my new videos. Hit that like button. Please head over to classicallyabby.locals.com if you'd like to support my channel, see more of this content, and be part of our community. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!